The murder of a restaurant manager in Reading who was run over on Valentine's Day has seen a man jailed for more than 20 years. Shazeb Khalid, who's 25 years old, has been found guilty of murder after he reused a stolen Range Rover to mow down and kill Vignesh Rahman, who was a manager at the Vel Indian restaurant early this year. Khalid had targeted Mr. Rahman, who was 36 years old, as part of a mission to stop him from reporting alleged immigration infractions in the restaurant. The 36-year-old victim was cycling home after Valentine's evening dinner service at the restaurant when he was knocked off his bike by a Range Rover and then attacked by the driver as he lay critically injured on the ground. Khalid, who drove the Range Rover that night, said during the trial that he'd only ever intended to scare off Mr. Rahman after the restaurant he managed had been fined £30,000 for employing illegal immigrants. However, a jury found Khalid guilty of murder. As I said, he's been given a long sentence. Judge Amjad Nawaz, presiding over the proceedings at Reading Crown Court, told Khalid, "Mr. Khalid, there is only one sentence in law, and that is a life sentence for you." He had his co-D, a 27-year-old Soheem Hussain, was accused of coordinating the murder, along with Khalid, who's also been jailed, but I'll come to that in a moment. During the trial opening, the prosecutor Sally Howes told the jury, "The fatal collision between the vehicle, which turned out to be a Range Rover Evoque, and Vignesh Rahman on his bicycle was not an unfortunate accident. This was a well-planned, well-coordinated, deliberate, targeted attack in which Shazeb Khalid and Soheem Hussain both played a part and are both guilty." Mr. Rahman, who put his heart and soul into his work at the Vel restaurant, had moved to the UK from India with his wife in December 2022 on a skilled worker visa, the court was told during the trial. In the weeks leading up to his violent death, Mr. Rahman handed in his notice after he was offered a new role at the Hyatt Regency luxury restaurant and hotel in London. On the night of Valentine's Day, Mr. Rahman had finished closing down the restaurant and was cycling back home in Reading when he was mowed down by a Range Rover. A witness who lived nearby gave his testimony before the court, and he told jurors how he went outside to investigate and heard moaning coming from something on the ground. He said that something was a man and his bicycle was in a tangled heap. He was unconscious, his breathing was laboured, and there was a sound of gurgling. Emergency services were called and Mr. Rahman was rushed to the Royal Berkshire Hospital, where he sadly died on February the 15th. May he rest in peace. A post-mortem examination later found that Mr. Rahman had died from a severe head injury caused by a vehicle wheel running over the head, or potentially a crushing event between two surfaces such as parts of a car and a tree. Subsequent police investigation revealed Khalid then texted his girlfriend, "I got a mission later," on Valentine's evening, just a few hours before Mr. Rahman's death. His girlfriend was also standing trial alongside Khalid and Hussain as she was accused of having provided Khalid with a safe house for him to stay after the murder of Rahman. However, the young woman was unanimously cleared of one count of perverting the course of justice. So, as I said, his co-D was saying he was cleared of murder. However, he's found guilty of one count of assisting an offender instead, and he's been sentenced to 4 years in prison. Before the sentences were handed down, the court heard a witness impact statement from Mr. Rahman's wife, Ramia, who said her life had been shattered by her husband's murder. In a statement read out, she said, "This was the first time in my entire life that part of me has been detached and taken away. God had not only shattered my dreams, but has also taken the love of my life away. I was so distressed and I fainted when I was told the cause of his death, and I prayed for him to come back every day. I would suffer panic attacks and wake up in the middle of the night." His widow said that the restaurant manager had been working at a hotel in Qatar when he received an offer to work in a hotel in the USA, but turned it down to work in Reading as he thought Reading would be a safer place. He said, "We decided to go to the UK as we thought it was one of the safest countries in the world to live in. How wrong were we?" Just hours before his murder, Mr. Rahman had been celebrating accepting a new job at a hotel in London and had been enjoying leaving drinks with his colleagues. His widow said, "It was the job of his dreams. We felt we were opening a new chapter in our life." Once again, I just want to say rest in peace, the victim. My condolences go out to your family. Who's already serving a lengthy sentence for drugs offences has now received an additional 20 years for his major involvement in a prison drugs plot. Yesterday, Omar Din was sentenced after pleading guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. In 2021, Omar Din was convicted of 2 conspiracies to supply Class A, namely heroin and cocaine. Following an investigation by Greater Manchester Police in 2013, Din went on the run for 6 years to evade detection. However, an international arrest warrant was issued and he was arrested whilst travelling from Istanbul to Sweden. He was detained by police where he had 2 phones and around $2.5 in cash. He was left with little choice but to plead guilty and was sentenced to 7 years and 3 months in jail. As he acclimatised to life in jail, he continued his criminal career from his cell. On the 15th of August 2023, he was subject to a search of his cell where he stated that he had no unauthorised items such as mobile phones and drugs. The prison officer recovered an orange exercise roller which smelt strongly of cannabis from under his bed. The foam roller was taken away to be searched and they also recovered an iPhone and a charger cable from inside it. The phone was handed to Greater Manchester Police and detectives from the Serious Organised Crime Group launched an investigation, and it soon became clear that this phone was being used to supply drugs and was controlled by Omar Din. Whilst no outgoing messages were recovered from the device, an examination of the phone showed extensive incoming correspondence from different parties showing Din was involved with a large-scale drugs conspiracy and he was facilitating the sale of large quantities of drugs from prison with an established criminal network from the outside. From the messages recovered by police, Din and his associates were also discussing future international business opportunities, showing Din had no intention of slowing down or stepping away from crime despite his circumstances being locked up in prison. Messages also showed they were sharing debtor lists, location of drug deals and discussing large volumes of cash and Class A drugs, creating volumes of incriminating evidence for detectives. Superintendent Adi Buchthorpe, who led the operation, said the impact of organised crime in prison not only impacts the prison estate, but overlaps into the wider communities who fall victim to the drugs trade and associated violence. So to date, this operation has led to a number of arrests and recoveries of illegal commodities and contraband both within the prisons and in the areas around the prison estate. This operation is in its early days, but we remain committed to working with partners to continue our pursuits of those who offend in prison. And in this next news story, it's coming from London ways. And a man who repeatedly stabbed his victim, causing him life-threatening injuries, has been jailed. Abu Bakr Walad from Ilford appeared at Snaresbrook Crown Court where he was sentenced after pleading guilty to Section 18 GBH. The court heard how police were called to an address in Ilford to reports that a man had been repeatedly stabbed. The victim, a 28-year-old, had been stabbed in excess of 8 times, causing life-threatening injuries. He was provided life-saving first aid by the first officers in attendance and transported to a Royal London Hospital by the London Ambulance Service, where he underwent emergency surgery and was later placed into an induced coma. Abu Bakr was quickly identified as a suspect. Using cell site data, officers tracked him to an address in Luton and he was promptly arrested the following day. He was sentenced to 13 years imprisonment. So guys, there's a number of stories coming out from the streets of the UK. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.